Welcome to Guards Down. Join your host, Greg C. Washington, as he explores how people from various backgrounds have overcome bouts with trauma and complicated grief. If you're stuck, know someone who might be, or want to be in a position to help someone, you're in the right place. We can't wait to share the tips and tricks we've learned on our journey to healing and putting our guards down.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Guards Down. I have with me today Brian. Look. Hey everyone, this is Greg Washington, and welcome to the next episode of Guards Down. I have with me today Brian Solmonson. How's it going, Brian?
I'm doing well, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Well, look, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so just like you, I went to West Point, infantry officer, but I'm also an Army brat. So my dad was a command sergeant major, and I was like, Dad, I'm gonna join the Army, and he was like, you're only going if you go to West Point. And so I was able to get in. Originally, I was class of 2011, and then I became class of 2012. That's another story for another day. But after I graduated West Point, spent 5 years in the military. I just got out. I got out 3 years ago, actually. I've been married for about 8 years to Nicole. We were part of the 2% club, so we dated the whole time at school. I know,
there we go.
So I'm talking about. Actually, I asked her out after I got done with Beast. I got a sophomore's phone, and I called her. And I was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And we stayed together. And I got two girls. I got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and now I'm down in Florida and been working in an IT company for about 3 years now.
Man, that's awesome. Look, how many hours did you walk at West Point?
How many hours? I walked, man, that made me upset. I walked 5 hours. I was late coming back from the Army-Navy game because of a car accident, and they still gave me hours.
Oh, man. Oh. Well, I'm glad everyone was good, and hopefully it was. Well, if it was 2011, then it wasn't during the time when we were winning.
Yeah, no, right. Well, how many hours did you walk?
Man, I got in. I think I got about between 50 to 70 hours. Yeah,
pretty solid.
Give or take, you know. I was a modest cadet. I'll just say that. It definitely could have been more.
Yeah, for sure.
Of course, you know, we're talking about PTSD and complicated grief. And there are different forms of trauma and grief that people go through. And for me, the part of it is I feel like different cultures handle and deal with grief in different ways. And so I'm out looking to talk to different people like yourself and others that, you know, have been through the fire and or making it, that can, you know, speak on it, share words of wisdoms, help someone else put some tools in their toolkit to kind of like, you know, make it through. And so I just want to first just appreciate you for coming on, and also appreciate you for your service and sacrifice that you made in being here.
Thanks for having me. It's an honor, man.
All right. Well, the first question, did your parents or someone close to you teach you how to deal with grief and trauma?
Yeah, this is a hard one because both of my parents come from the military. So you kind of know how it works with how do you deal with weakness. You don't, you know, you power through. And both my parents had very difficult childhoods as well. And so they had to learn how to cope themselves as growing up. So I don't know if they taught me, they taught me the best way they knew how, which was, all right, something is going wrong. Let's address it if we can. Let's move forward. But we didn't get too deep into the emotional side of it, or really get in with groups and people intimately with our grief and trauma. So We didn't really dive into that deeply. So no, not really.
Okay. With understanding that and and having now been an officer in the Army and understanding the tempo, do you understand how your parents dealt with it?
Oh yeah.
So what inspired you to go into the military?
Yeah, so I always looked up to my dad, and he joined when he was 17. He made command sergeant major in 18 years, and I just always looked up to him. He was always leading people, taking care of people. My mom was a Czech linguist. My grandpa was in the military. My uncle served with Patton. So it's just been ingrained in kind of our culture of our family. And so it was just pretty natural for me that's my next step after I got through high school. So I wanted to go to West Point since I was like probably 10 years old. So that was always the chart I was going.
Got you. No, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. To be able to have your dad, and of course, him being, a sergeant major in the Army, like that's a step above the rest,
Yeah, right. I still made him salute me. I was like, standing at attention when you're talking to me, Sergeant Major.
I bet he gave you hell for that one, right?
Hey, if he sees this, I'll be in trouble too. Yeah.
That's all right. That's all right. Well, my ad is definitely off to him, so I appreciate, and I can definitely see the love between y'all. So tell us, what has been your experience dealing with trauma and grief?
Yeah. So there's various types of trauma: physical, sexual, emotional, spiritual. Mine is mostly on the emotional side, and the way I've dealt with it is through addiction, isolation from other people, and control. So I mean, being an Army officer, whatever you do or don't do in your unit, it's on you. So the whole control piece, like I had that before the military. Try to control my surroundings, try to control other people's emotions and my emotions, and it just kind of fed right into it. So, but I mean, I struggled immensely with addiction for 10 years, which is really another form of control and isolation and not dealing with my issues.
Gotcha. Man, so in dealing with that, and of course, I always tell all of my guests, it's on you as far as how much you want to share, and
Yeah.
I'm just happy to have you on because one, I'm not perfect, and one of the main reasons for me doing this is that I'm still out here trying to heal and learn, to deal with the grief and the trauma that's happened in my life. So like, hey, like I said, I commend you and I thank you. Okay, so in dealing with the trauma, what's been the collateral damage behind it?
Yeah. So I guess the first thing, I'm really fresh in my recovery. I told you earlier this morning, a year ago, if you would have said, "Hey man, you're going to be on my show," I'd have been like, "You're crazy. I got it all figured out, bro." I was telling people what to do. Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I just lost me.
No, you're fine. What's the collateral damage behind the main grief you've been with?
Yeah, the collateral damage is, I think the first thing I just realized right now is my own heart, my own desires, my own soul, my own health, emotionally, mentally. I've kind of hid my heart, my feelings my whole life. And then outside of that, because I didn't deal with actually what was going on, it led to addiction, control, isolation. So my own soul, and also, I've had struggles with my marriage because of my addiction and my inability to really connect intimately and emotionally with my wife, which I'm working on now. But when I first went through some therapy in 2015, they're like, "Hey man, you're an intimacy anorexic." And I was like, dude, what does that even mean? But it's just an inability or unwillingness to engage your heart, your emotions, your fears, your vulnerabilities, your weaknesses, bring them to the light and get help. I just refuse to do it, and I wouldn't do it. So it's really hurt a lot of relationships because I haven't been open to connecting with people intimately. Because if you do that, you could get hurt, and you need to be vulnerable. And you know, the best way to keep people away is to not be vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the fear of being vulnerable?
I'd get hurt. Like if I tell you I'm struggling with something, you know, I struggle with toxic shame. So it's like, then you're worthless. You have no value. If you're weak, if you have issues, you're not really a man. And so I you know, for me to admit that I have weaknesses, especially, and then going in the infantry where you're leading men in combat and the stakes are high, I'm not going to admit weakness. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you're on patrol, it's like, if you position yourself as weak, the enemy is going to attack you more than if you position yourself as I've got stuff in control and I'm strong and I'm going to kill you if you mess with me. So it's just been kind of ingrained in me over time. Don't show weakness, don't be vulnerable, and don't let people in, because then you can get hurt. And that's kind of how I lived my whole life, unfortunately, until now.
Yeah. I mean, it's honor in being a man, and it's a struggle between being a man and being human.
Yeah.
You know, like I definitely understand where you're coming from when you talk about not showing a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And I know for me personally, I had to figure that out. Not only individual, but also like in my relationship.
Yeah.
And what I learned, especially more so from my relationship than individual, was that when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, right, with the person you're with, it's actually a show of strength because you two are one. And so my vulnerability should have been my wife's or my ex-wife now strength, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so it was a hard lesson that I had to learn. Of course, I learned it too late. But looking back on it, you know, I can appreciate it now. And it was a tough but a good lesson learned. So,
thanks for sharing that, man. I'm sorry to hear that, but glad that you're learning now and helping others, because it's really needed.
Indeed. And so I hope I can get a plethora of diverse people to come onto the show and just have a conversation with me, because I want folks out there to know that, like, we are all human and we're all trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
And so no one is going to be perfect and can get it right the first go round, but we're here and we're going to make the best that we can and keep fucking moving forward. So,
amen. Yeah.
So, okay, so tell me, with everything that you had to deal with, you know, your trauma with addiction, sexuality, you know, the whole nine, what were some of the coping skills that you had to learn on your own, both healthy and unhealthy?
Coping skills I had to learn on my own. Yeah. Unfortunately, it was like, so I was anorexic when I was 12. I think I brought that up. And so that all stemmed from feelings of not being worthy or valued or loved unless I was a certain way. And so to get affirmation, you know, I went from being a chubby kid to try to get fit. Then I became a bodybuilder. Then I went to West Point and got into CrossFit. And so my coping mechanism was to do things. So if I could do things like go into West Point, like I'm the man, right? Like if I can do things, then that affirms that I'm actually worth something. and then I went to the infantry, and then I went to Ranger School. And so I'm trying to do all these things in airborne school and all these schools to be affirmed in who I am by what I do instead of being known and loved for who I am. And so like the thing I was looking for the most was love and to be known in my hurt and just for me. But I put everything into what I could do so other people can affirm me for what I do. So I'm like a rat, you know, on a wheel, just trying to keep moving, keep turning so I can feel good and not really stop and deal with how I actually feel and what I've been through.
Gotcha.
And so that's the negative part, you know, of what
Mm-hmm.
how I coped.
Okay. And what were some of the healthy coping mechanisms that you learned, you know, even during that time?
Yeah. I guess the helping or the healthy ones would be even stuff like fitness, you know, is good, being outside, being in community, being with people. I had some really close friends that I got to know at West Point um, that really helped me too. The big change happened when in my senior year at West Point, I became a believer, a Christian. I was atheist, agnostic my whole life. And that was really a pivoting point. But even after that, I struggled with addiction. I couldn't stop for years. So, but most of the stuff, you know, the physicality, the community, that really helped me.
Yeah. Okay. Man, there's so many different ways we can go to go from atheist to Christian to, you know, recognize that you're dealing with something to now, right, taking a pivot and turning from it. What has helped you, like, to recognize that in you? And I asked that question because I'm more so wondering, right, is it cultures, the different cultures you learn help shape how you do?
Yeah, that's good. So definitely the culture, right? If in the military it was like, figure it out, man. Like you're not bleeding, so it can't be that bad. But my first time in 2015, I was seeing this chaplain with my wife for counseling, and he was like, "You need to go to addiction counseling. You need help." And I was like, and then my wife was like, "Yeah, you're gonna go if you want to be with me, you know." And so that was the first time I knew, like, man, something I need to fix something, right? And then I got out of the Army. I got really plugged into this church, and I was meeting with a bunch of people, a lot of the elders, the leaders, and they're like, "Dude, you need help, and it's okay, man. Like, I've struggled with addiction. I've been through X, Y, and Z." And so they had this established culture where it was like, we're broken. Like, you haven't been seen or people haven't sewn into you or tried to help you, and you've been through all this crap. So like, bro, you're tough, but you need to go get help, and it's good. So it wasn't like shaming me. The culture was like, man, we're all broken, and but for God's grace, we'd all be in the pit. We'd all be dead. We'd all be divorced. We'd all be, sorry, not in a bad way for you, you know, but we'd all be suffering a lot more than we are without God's grace and each other to help us. So.
Yeah. No, and with you. And look, please don't feel sorry for my divorce because I don't. Me and my wife, we are like best friends right now. And
oh, nice. Amen.
For me, it took having to recognize that we were in an unhealthy situation, and had we stayed in it, it would have been worse for us and the kids. And so to just step back and give ourselves that space was healthy. And I also knew that I was in this for life. So whether she is my wife or my ex-wife, we have kids, we have a life, we have a family together. It's never going to go away. And so I know that I had to step up and fix that so that my kids wouldn't have what I would call this generational curse of, you know, not having a strong, supportive family unit. And
yeah, for sure.
It took a lot of effort, but I mean, we got there and we made it work, and you know, we love our blended family. So I mean, look, we're in there.
That's good, man. I mean, it takes a lot of humility to be able to maintain a relationship after hurt and divorce and to still come together. I mean, that's really good. Like, not many people can do that, you know? That'd be super hard.
Right, right. And so, you know, and this is a good lesson learned for all those out there is if you're in a relationship and it's bad and you think divorce is the way out, especially if you have kids, it's not, right? I'm not, you know, against it or for it. I'm not saying, you know, either one. All I am saying is no matter what,
Yeah.
you have to put in that work for your family.
Yeah. That's good. I remember I was texting, I have a sponsor, and I was like, man, I ran my whole life from my problems. I went to the West Point in the Army. I PCS every few years, a new job every few years. And I was like, I can't get away from me now. Like, wherever I go, there I am. So, like, I can't get away from my problems anymore. Whereas before, it was just like, let me do X, Y, and Z. I have a next move. I have a deployment. I have training. But I'm like, dang, I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to distract myself. And that's kind of what led me to recovery, was just falling apart and depression and anxiety and the suicidal type thoughts. So that's
So
why I'm here now.
when you talk about things falling apart, what are some signs that you were dealing with complicated grief or PTSD?
Yeah. So, I mean, the biggest thing in my life was like, what's going on, man? Like, I was neglecting my children. I saw that my kids were not doing as well. My wife wasn't doing well. You know, I was a manager in a job, running 3 groups for church, in seminary, online, like, plus being a father and a husband, and I was spinning out of control. So I was like, I'm on the top of my game. I'm leading. I'm like trying to go into ministry full time, whatever. And I am the most despair, the most darkness, the most depression. I remember looking, I was like, my weapon is right next to me in my bed. I'm like, I was like, I remember thinking, I just can't wait for this life to be over, because there's going to be no more pain. But I didn't know what it was. I'm just like, I just felt bad, you know? I felt terrible. I felt dark and despairing, but I had nowhere to go, or I didn't know what to do with it. So that's when I knew, like, well, other people said, Brian, you need to come to recovery. And so I got into a recovery program and started peeling back the layers of the onion. And there's a lot there. So.
Man, you hit a couple of parts. When you say my weapon is next to me in my bed, are you talking your physical, like a gun, or are you talking your wife?
So it depends on the day at that point. So I have a Glock right next to me. I was thinking in my bed, but a lot of the times, by how I was feeling, I feel like so terrible, so much anger, loneliness, sadness. Like, but I didn't know that's how I felt. I just knew I felt like crap. But I would project, like, I feel a certain way, so it has to be my wife. Like, it has to be, she's the problem that's making me feel this way. So sometimes I would make her the problem so that it would account for how I felt inside, instead of dealing with how I feel and then getting to the root cause. But I had no idea how to do that. You know, all I knew how to do growing up was like, I feel a certain way, like, just power forward. You know, I'm still breathing. I got a house. I got a good job. Everything's fine. So diminishing everything, not concentrating on it, distracting myself, and then going. And then, but it catches up to you, man. You know, it gets to you. It got to me.
Yeah, yeah. So when you say powering forward, give us an example.
Yeah. So when I'm having these thoughts of, like, you know, my life, I'd rather not be alive, honestly, and spinning in depression and anxiety and complete despair. I'd still get up early, read my Bible, go pray. I would do all these things. Like, I'm going to make it happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to read books. I'm just going to keep going and going and going. And then it's going to fix itself. I want to control everything. You know, like, I'm in control of my own feelings. I'm in control of my own future. And then I came to the point where I realized I'm not in control of how I feel, and I'm not getting any better. So I was trying to do everything I could, like I was actually taking a class on this from seminary about how not to burn out. And I'm like, I'm burning out reading a book about not burning out. And then that's when I was just like, all right, I got to give up on myself being the only person to help me. I need others.
Yeah, man. So we're gonna go back, right? Because we talked about the weapon in the bed, whether it was the actual rock or your wife. To go from atheist to Christian, that's a full,
Yeah.
180 in itself.
Yeah, man.
And I know that's a process too. Speak on that.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, it's kind of a long story, but I'll keep it short. Basically, at West Point, as a plebe, I was in this company, and I roomed with this guy from Indiana. He was an atheist, man. He had an atheist Bible, and I was like, man, this stuff's stupid. It's basically a ticket so I can get to heaven. I'm a believe so I get to heaven. I was like, I'm not down with that. But one of my best friends was from Indiana, another person, and and he was a Christian. So you had the Christian from Indiana, who was one of my best friends, and then my roommate was an atheist, both from Indiana, and they knew each other because they went through the congressional process together, interview and even get in. So my junior year, I get scrambled into the company with my best friend who's a Christian. What are the odds of that, right? So we're rooming together, and his name's Matt. And this dude, he's so loving. He's like the first person, and I was like, this guy loves me for not anything I bring to the table. He just loves me for me. Like, I was like, dang, I don't know, something different about him. So then my atheist friend would come over, and they debate about Christianity and atheism, and I just make fun of Christians. But then I was like, I make fun of Christians, but I've never even read the Bible. I don't know anything about it. So I started reading the Gospel of John, and I was just like, look, God, if you're real, reveal yourself to me. If you're not, I'm done with this. Because I kind of grew up Christian, but didn't really care much about it. And then after reading that book, just completely changed. Like my eyes, I was like, I believe. I can't tell you why, but this is true. What he says is true. And then my heart changed. And so like I'm a different person, and people are like, what's going on with this guy? But then I still have my addiction. I still have my trauma. And so now I still believe, but now I'm opening myself up to others and to God to actually bring healing instead of trying to control my own healing because I can't. So.
Yeah, man, that's powerful. That is powerful to have that self-awareness, to understand where you're at, to take upon yourself to learn, to teach yourself more about life and what's going on around you, and then to acknowledge a greater being, more powerful than you, and humble yourself, to that. I mean, that's life-changing. And and like you said, it happened. Like, so I'm completely with you. My experience with religion, I grew up in the church. And so
Okay.
for me, it was slightly different. So when you look at my background, my lineage, of course, my ancestors were slaves. And
Sorry, bro.
from Africa to here, Christianity was forced on us. Whatever our religion was, or our purpose was before, the only thing that we were taught was Christianity. And so that's been the balance, throughout history. And so my family teaching us those values of Christianity, moving forward from generation to generation till it finally gets to me, has been helpful.
Yeah.
Old hymns. I used to sing in the choir, and I won't tell too many people that, but now everybody knows now. Like all of that. And so that brought me joy, that brought me peace. That allowed that in itself, just singing, allowed me to have a stress release, and just reverencing and showing a show of force that I submit to a higher power.
Yeah.
I also remember going to West Point and not understanding the different groups of Christianities out there,
Yeah.
and feeling like, it was like some hypocrites, for one. And
Yeah.
two, being an officer in the Army, they tell you can't voice your political or religious views. You're a leader,
Yeah.
lead. And that's, the main focus. And I also remember being in Afghanistan and looking at a Muslim guy about my age, or maybe a few years older, and recognizing that his whole entire life he grew up Muslim, and that's what was taught. And so to be able to practice, one, religious tolerance, and then two, there's a certain portion in the Bible that tells you to love your brother.
Mm-hmm.
And so to just like hang my hat on that versus trying to convert, trying to say that they were wrong, whatever they choose to believe in is their choice. My job, my portion, what I felt like God wanted for me was to get an understanding of love thy neighbor, love thy brother.
Yeah.
Right. And I appreciate you sharing, your journey on religion and how, that took a pivot in your life, how it changed you. So I mean, that's awesome, man.
Thanks for asking. And this is real. I was talking to my wife and I was like, if it wasn't for Christ in our lives, we would not be married and I would be doing some stupid stuff. like he saved me in a lot of ways, man. And now I'm getting to know him personally now, and not so theoretically in my mind, but like in my heart. That's where the healing is coming, and it's through people, to use his people, which is it's been profound, bro. Just people loving me, and actually seeing the love of God through people, like telling them my junk and they're being like, bro, I love you. Like telling them my deepest, darkest secrets, and they're like, dude, you're so worthy. And I'm like, how can this be true, man? I suck. And they still say, bro, like, me too. I struggled too. And that's been the most healing for me, is hearing people in the same boat, and then we just try to love each other in that. So.
Indeed. So you spoke on earlier on your roommate, and you said, man, it was just something about him. He just loves me for me.
Yeah.
And so, I want to ask, what can someone do to support a person dealing with grief and PTSD? And let's first talk from the outside looking in, like your roommate and, people around you, and then also you for yourself.
Yeah, outside in, man, is presence for me. Presence mean not like present, like here's $20, but like just being there, and like and then knowing they're not gonna leave. They're here. They want to listen to me, and they're here for me, and they see me, and they know me, and they affirm me. They don't want me to stay where I'm at, and they're gonna help me move out of where I'm at. But for right now, they're present with me in my struggle, right? And it's not like you need to do X, Y, and Z to get better. You need to do this and that. It's, hey man, I hear you, and I just want to be with you. I want to mourn with you. I think that's like the first step, is just being there for somebody, because a lot of us don't have that. You know what I'm saying? Like, especially quarantine, my anxiety's through the roof because I don't have people that I can be with. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the first thing you can do for somebody else. Just be there for them and not judge them and not tell them what to do right away, but just to be with them in their mess. What was the second part of that question?
And then how does a person help save themselves?
How did they help save themselves? Man, if I knew that, I would tell you, and I would have done it. Just go to help. Like, so what I'm learning, I'm 5 months into my recovery. You don't tell everybody everything, right? You find safe people who you can talk to, and you get help. Whether the VA, whether that's your family or a friend, the best thing you can do for yourself is admit you have a problem, but don't think because you have a problem that you're different than other people, or you're worse than other people, or you don't have as much value, because everybody's struggling. So admit, and it requires humility, but admit that, man, I need somebody, and then go seek help and be willing to do that, because isolated, I couldn't do it, so I wouldn't recommend it. So.
I got you. No, and I mean that's the God honest truth. When you helping yourself is not that you have to figure it out. For me, I think it's more so just acknowledging that you can't figure it out and you need help and go get it.
Yeah. I'm in the 12 steps right now. It's from a gospel biblical perspective, same contract, right? But I'm like working through these workbooks and I'm like, I want to figure this out. I want the answer. I want control. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to control my own healing. And so I've had to come to grips with like, Brian, whether or not you know what's going on or not, just give yourself to the process, give yourself to your brothers in Christ who are helping you, and trust God with the outcome. Because I've tried it on my own and it didn't work. So I'm just trying to trust the process, and then always reach out to people. Like I'm texting people every day, bro, I'm feeling super sad and lonely. Like I need you, you know? And that takes a lot of humility and a lot of courage to even reach out to people. So I texted my buddy. I was like, dude, I'm pretty courageous. I was like, I reached out to help to all the leaders of our church and told them how jacked up I am. I was like, I actually think I have courage. And it's kind of a paradox, but I was like, felt good about myself. I was like, yeah. So pretty funny.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And I would agree. You do have courage in acknowledging that you need help. Like there's strength in being vulnerable, and that's what we were talking about earlier. So like what you just said is it. You know what I mean? Like to acknowledge that, okay, hey, yeah, look, I don't have everything figured out. I don't have all the answers. Something on the inside feels wrong. Let me go to someone for help.
Yeah.
Being that vulnerable is actually strength. And it is courageous and it is courage. And that in itself is allowing you to take hold of your life.
Yeah.
That's like one of the first steps. And I mean, you got me motivated. You got me fired up over here. So. So I appreciate it, man. I do. And look, understand that I am learning from you just as much as you're learning, you know, from me and us having this conversation.
Amen. 100%.
What's been the toughest part of your journey?
The toughest part of my journey? Okay. Yeah. The toughest part was going to people and telling them I need help, because my biggest fear was rejection. So I'm always in this toxic shame kind of area where I feel like I'm not good enough, I'm not valuable, I'm not worth anything. And if I reveal this to you, you know, you're going to reject me. And so the hardest part, it was that. And it's also continuing to seek out people when I need help. Because the first thing I want to do when I feel like crap is I want to isolate and just ignore it, minimize it, and just not let anybody in. I want to protect myself from potential more danger and hurt by telling people my problems and then being rejected. But now I'm growing more confident because I know these men aren't going to leave me. And I keep telling them my problems and they keep coming towards me and helping me and loving me. But I still have to make myself like, Brian, dude, you're super lonely right now. You have a lot of fear and shame. You're not doing well. Your anxiety is through the roof. You can't concentrate. You're checking the news every 10 seconds. Once my obsessive compulsive starts kicking in, that's like a trigger for me. Like, bro, you need to reach out because you're not doing well. So, yeah.
So part, like you said, knowing your triggers.
Yeah.
Right, is one. So knowing your triggers. And when you know your triggers, understand that, you know, you should immediately like reach out for help. You should immediately call for your tribe.
Yeah.
and get someone till, one can be there. Like, yeah, I agree. I agree. So the next topic is about how do people make amends? So that old cliche, hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, for sure.
So in the process of dealing with trauma and grief and, trying to process it, people tend to hurt
Yeah.
people. And so have you hurt folks along your process, and how did you make amends?
Yeah. Probably hurt a lot more people than I even know, but my addiction really hurt my wife very deeply, because my addiction has been pervasive in a lot of other areas that she's experienced. So, I think how I make amends is we're still working through that. I'm still relatively young in my journey. But what I'm trying to do is, which is hard for me, is own my side of the street, acknowledge, like, yes, I did these things, and then trying to listen and understand and respond when she reaches out and needs help and talk about it. But the hard part for me is I'm super afraid of intimacy and emotions because I can't control it. Like, the fact that I can't control emotions of other people makes me super afraid, because I don't want to deal with people freaking out. I don't want to deal with a lot of, drama. And so what I'm trying to do is enter into that lovingly, but it's a work in process, and I'm not doing the best job at times. So, but just focusing on me too, just focusing on like what am I doing? How am I pursuing my own healing? And then once we're there, I want to pursue it with her. So,
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of people say that, when you talk about, hurt people, along this process. I've gotten a lot of folks that will say it was their significant other that they hurt the most. And I just want to take a moment just to talk about the vulnerabilities of a marriage.
Mm-hmm. Bro, we're going there. Let's do it.
Right. So you said this vow: for sickness and in health, to death do us part, for better or worse, and you're in it. And, being in the midst of dealing with your trauma and grief and wanting to put out that fire by some destructive behavior, going to satisfy it, you're in turn hurting the person next to you, that's closest to you. And normally it is your significant other, the kids, and then, your surrounding family. Tell us, man, what's been your view of marriage and your renewed commitment and strength to your wife?
Yeah. So I heard someone say this, so it's not for me. But I heard this guy say, when people say, I love you, they really mean I need you. So once your spouse does not meet a need that you have, then your love is pretty much conditional. At least that's how mine has been. It's like, as long as you're meeting my needs, we're good, and I'll treat you well, right? Versus, and this goes back to my faith, it's like Ephesians 5 says, the man represents Christ and the woman represents the church. And Christ died for the church, and he serves the church. And so now I'm trying to think more of, how can I serve my wife and not be so self-centered? Like, I know I have to deal with my own healing, but how can I be more outward focused at her versus what is she doing to me that's hurting me? Or because a lot of the times I realized when she would say something to me, I would take it negatively and I would go into toxic shame, but she wasn't trying to be mean. I just took it because it fit the narrative that I've had my whole life of, not being worthy, not being valuable. And so now I'm like, if I hear something that I take wrong from her, I'm like, she's not meaning that. I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt instead of assuming,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so used to my whole life being on the defensive and don't touch me and I'm not wrong. Like, because if I'm wrong, then I go straight into, Brian, you're nothing. You have no value. So that's been the biggest struggle.
Yeah. And what's helped y'all stay together?
I mean, number one is faith, our kids, and community. Like at our darkest points, so back in 2015, we had a really rough spot. Got back from deployment. I was heavy in my addiction. Got caught. Bad news. And then now in 2020 or 2019, community came in and surrounded us and said, "Hey, man, we're here for you. Let's talk to both of you, and then let's bring you guys together." Without them and without our faith, we wouldn't be together. Bottom line on that one.
Gotcha. No, I like how you put it, right? You said, "I love you" equates to "I need you."
Mm-hmm.
And what people have to fight against, not necessarily, a bad thing, right? I need you, meaning give.
Yeah.
What can I do for you? So,
Yeah.
I receive all this, but what can I give? What can I bring to the table? So when you say, how can I serve her and have more of an outward focus towards doing for her, I think you were very spot on, man, with that. And, I hope that whoever's out there listening, would also feel the same way, because, marriage is daily work. It's not.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the same concept of not just, marriage, but teamwork, right? So, whether you're in Ranger School and all of you guys are out marching and you got to set up, your base camp, who's going to take first watch versus who's going to, have that downtime. And me and the kids, when we talked earlier, we were out walking. We did 6.5 miles today. And so to get that in, right? That motivation, that struggle of the day to do that, and then to come home or to build that defense and now say, okay, what are our priorities of work? And everybody needs to pitch in.
Yeah.
Right. And be contributing team members. And so you hit the nail on the head with that one, man. So yeah. Well, you out here dropping some jewels, man.
Dude, so many smart people and wise people have really sewn into us, man. Like, we're very fortunate. I'm very grateful for everyone who's loved us and not given up on us, man. And I read a lot of books too. I'm a nerd, so half the stuff I say, I just steal from other people. So. That's the truth.
I like it, man. I love it. Okay, so what kept you going when you wanted to give up?
What kept me going when I wanted to give up? It goes back to kind of a hymn, I think. I think that I did want to give up. So I'm like holding on. I'm trying to do all these things. I'm like, God, I'm gonna, I'm a Christian, so God, I gotta read, I gotta pray, I gotta do this. But He had His hands around me the entire time and didn't let me fall. That's the only thing I can explain. Because left to my own devices, I would be destructive, and it would have ended a lot worse. It would have ended a long time ago. Especially in this season, I wouldn't have made it out. So I think He held on to me even as I was pursuing all the things I thought I should do as a man of faith. But He held on to me, and I just kept struggling through His Word and meeting with people, and then people would be like, "Hey, man, we need you. Like, you're a leader, bro. We need you." And so that gave me a lot of heart too. Hearing like, people need me. Like, oh, and we need you to get healthy so you can bring more to us. I'm like, dang, all right. So those are the two main things. I know it's not very practical, but that's how I kept going.
No, I got you. So you touched me when you said, I didn't want to give up. That sounded like that came from the core of you.
Yeah, man. And
so I want to just take a step back, because when we spoke earlier, I told you to remind me to talk about and define toxic shame.
Yeah.
as well as the serenity prayer. So speak on those two things for us.
Yeah, and a lot of veterans live in toxic shame and they don't know it. There's a book called Voice of the Heart. It talks about the 8 feelings, and it's not funny, but it's like they're hurt, lonely, sad, anger, fear, shame, guilt, and glad. I'm like, there's only one good one. There's 7 ones that are bad. Like, well, I want to learn about these. But shame, if it's good, can lead you to humility. Like, man, I have limitations. I need help. So it's humility. But impaired, like the wrong way, it's toxic shame, meaning if I can't do something, I'm a failure. So instead of saying I can't do something, I need help, toxic shame says I can't do something, I'm of no value, I'm of no worth, I'm nothing. And that's kind of what I felt in the Army after I failed Ranger School a bunch of times. I'd show up to a unit as a lieutenant, with a bunch of Ranger Regiment guys, and I thought I was nothing. And then people would be like, man, you're weak, So I'm very in tune with toxic shame, which just basically is, bro, you're never going to be enough. Not only do you mess up stuff, but you're worth nothing. And that's something I've been fighting my whole life. And that's why I was anorexic, so I can look different, bodybuilding so I can look different, West Point so I can be seen as strong, and good in some way. And so tying that back to the serenity prayer, I'm gonna read it right quick. It's God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so, there is a part of us that we need to work and do things for ourselves and be diligent in our own recovery. But there's other things I can't control people. I can't control the reactions. I can't even control my own healing. I just have to give myself to the process and ask that God, my higher power in Christ, will do the work in me as I devote myself to the process of 12 steps in recovery. So,
Man, you damn near got me in tears. And I appreciate you for that, because along the path, along the journey, you only get to travel down that road once. And so if I can be a friend or a brother to that person that I meet on that journey, may I be that best friend or that best brother so that he remembers me. Because I may not travel down that path and get that chance again.
That's good.
And so just in meeting you, it's been very inspiring. It's been very courageous, like just to hear it. And so like, I can't thank you enough for allowing us to have this conversation. And I know you're early into your journey, and I pray you don't ever stop.
Thanks, bro. Me too.
Okay. What has caused you to correct some of your destructive behaviors?
What has caused me to correct some of my destructive behaviors? I wouldn't be married if I continued in my addiction and my destructive behaviors. I feel responsibility. I do some, I'm in my church. I'm called a deacon. It's just I help serve and lead stuff. Like, I want to be there for other people too. Like I struggle and I have my faults, but I know that, and now that I know I am needed, and I have worth solely because I'm a son of God. And now I know that more. I still don't believe it all the time. But now that I know my worth more, I know that people need me too. Like I need others. And so, that's part of it too, because I want to be the example and I want to help others. And I don't want to be the guy who's in my addiction telling you not to do it and be a hypocrite and then in my own problem. So, and I know that's what God wants from me. He wants me to be whole more than he wants me to help people. And so I'm just, it's all those things combined, man, is why I'm stopping these behaviors or trying to.
Yeah. I like that, man. So correcting those destructive behaviors because you want to be there, and recognizing that you're needed in a much higher capacity than what you could probably see on a day-to-day basis. So I definitely understand that.
I think, you mind if I hit on one more thing on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what really got me. My sponsor was like, bro, God is so content in his love for you. I was like, what does that even mean? I'm so used to doing things to be loved, but now because I know that I'm loved perfectly in Christ, there's like a quote where it's like, God chose you knowing everything you already were going to do. He's not going to change his mind. And so now it's not like I'm trying to change myself so I'm like accepted and loved by God. This is my faith lens. But because I already know I am, so my response is like, bro, I want to follow you, and I want to be whole, and I want to be obedient because I already am loved. So it's like a shift from do things in order to be accepted. But now that I am accepted in Christ, I'm going to do things out of my love for him. It's a totally opposite way of thinking that really has revolutionized this whole process for me.
Indeed. So with that, do you feel like you have to wait to your darkest hour to make a change?
I hope people don't. If you're listening to this, I hope if you have anything in your heart that's not right, you would go immediately. I only did because I hit, like Chad, Chad's, he was like, bro, I was at the bottom. I was at the complete bottom before I had enough humility to reach out. But I would, if you're not involved with a community of people who are not even recovery, but who are safe, where you can share your heart and what's going on inside, I would do that because that's the first step. And it's hard as veterans. We don't want to be like, seen as weak or we have problems, but everyone's got problems. Like we're two West Point infantry officers and we've got problems. We're supposed to be like the best of the best, like what was that movie? Men in Black, I think.
Yeah.
Best of the best with honor, sir. And we're so jacked up, man. It's like, let's just be real. We all have issues and let's talk about them in a safe place.
Indeed. Okay, so when we say talk about them in a safe place, let's get into professional help.
Okay.
So part of this, I like to discuss cultural sensitive therapy. And so
Okay.
you don't know, it's if your clinician, if your therapist, mental health professional looks like you or has been through similar experiences you've been through, the connection will be greater, which will in turn allow for the treatment to be more effective.
That's good.
And so if you can talk about your counselor and describe them and the help you got and how you felt getting that help.
Yeah. Well, so I think it's a two-pronged approach. I think one, it's one-on-one. And, my guy, his name's Evan. He's like the most loving dude. Big used to play basketball in college. He's like a teddy bear. He has no military background, but he has a similar childhood and thoughts and beliefs I have. And so he can relate to me emotionally like no one else I've ever connected with. I'm like, are you reading my mind, bro? Like you're telling me how I feel. And I'm like, dang, you're right. That is how I feel. So, I mean, that part, we didn't have the military aspect, but we did have sort of the emotional aspect. But the second part is I'm in a group of men from all backgrounds. Some were in gangs, some were in the military, some have been, addicted to drugs, in and out of prison. And it's getting a holistic view of everyone's perspectives. But I really, relate with my Marine Corps buddy. But when I hear the former guy on drugs, I'm like, bro, I have the same thoughts, but you just use drugs as your outlet and I use something else. Yeah. So I think it's kind of a both and approach for recovery that's helped me the most.
I got you. Okay. So what advice would you give your younger self?
My advice to my younger self. It would be to know that if you accept or that you have weaknesses and limitations, it doesn't make you worthless. It makes you human. And one of the coolest quotes I heard in recovery was, he was talking to another guy, my friend Evan. And the guy was like, he was talking to the guy was like, man, I'm just so lonely. And he said, your loneliness speaks to the best thing about you, which is that you desire relationship and intimacy. And I was like, it just blew my mind. So instead of looking like I'm lonely, this is bad, it's like, no, man, this shows you that you need and you want, you desire relationship, which is what you were created for. So go do it. So that was just super impactful to me. I don't even know what the question was. Sorry, but I just
No,
I
that
think
was
about
that was good. That was on point. Like,
I was like, oh, I love that quote.
let me break this down real quick. Like, that was awesome, man. Whoever said that, they were on point. Your loneliness speaks to the best thing about you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I like that. I do.
Yeah, it's something again I stole. I'm really good at it.
Okay, well, look, do you see your growth in all of this?
I do, and what helps is when you're in a community of other people, they remind me of it. So like even like I was like nervous about coming on this show because it's like pretty intimate, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I want to tell all my stuff. And he's like, man, you have so much to offer. You've grown so much. You're such a great like leader and a humble man. And I was like, dang, man, like I'm confident now, you know? I'm still nervous, but like people show me like, dude, you never would have thought 3 months ago, you never would have seen that in yourself. So, you know, the one-on-one time and then the group, it's like people remind me of the growth, which helps me because, you know, I'm used to being like, oh, I'm not good enough. And I default to that. And I don't even see my own growth. And so I just credit the other men that I'm with who love me enough to tell me that, you know.
Indeed. Well, look, you know, we're getting ready to wrap up. And so please share how people can get in touch with you, any efforts or work that you're doing that, you know, you want to get out there. You know, the floor is yours.
Yeah, if you look me up on LinkedIn, I have my my private email on there, and they can hit me up on there too. I'm part of a church in Southwest Florida called Summit Church. We have a big recovery program, and people we can connect you with, or I can connect with you too. You know, I thought I was moving towards like being a pastor, right? Like, let me tell you about the Bible and let's talk about Jesus. And now I'm just kind of on a big detour where it's like, bro, I have a lot of issues and I'm working through it, and I want to talk to you about yours too, if you want to, because I know how hard it is to go to somebody and be like, dude, I'm a complete mess. So like, and I'm bringing it into my work now, which is kind of fun. You know, I'm in a workplace, a corporate world. I'm like, yeah, let me show you some of my pain and let's connect on a deeper level because we're part of the team, and how you feel or how you try not to feel affects your performance in other areas, whether your work or at home. So I'm just trying to be more available to people in my own recovery. But I'm not like doing anything really special, you know, just trying to help people where I'm at.
I got you. No, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. All right. Well, any words of wisdom or encouragement that you want to share before we sign out?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that we weren't meant to be alone. So one of my favorite, I didn't even realize it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible is God. I'm not about to preach, I promise. God made Adam, right? And he's with God. Like you think he's with God. He's perfect. Like what else do you need? And then God said, it's not good for man to be alone. I'm going to make Eve. And so you're like, so some people I talk to are like, I just need God, bro. I'm good. And I'm just like, well, God says you're not, because he said Adam was alone when he gave him Eve. And so for me, that's just like get involved with other people, be vulnerable, take the first step. And if you take the first step, other people are more likely, you give them confidence to then take their step. And then before you know, there's a whole group of people who are just humble and seeking after healing and trying to help each other. But you have to be the first one to be like, yo, I'm pretty jacked up. And it takes a lot of courage. So hopefully this gives you courage, because I'm pretty jacked up.
Indeed, indeed. Man, I love it. I love it. I love it. And I've never even looked at it like that part of the Bible. So, for you to say that and just to acknowledge, like, it's, yeah, like that's exactly it. Because I mean, for Adam to be with God and shoot, man, like, you got everything at that point, you would think. And God was like, no, you need, I'll make Eve, you're lonely, So that companionship, that tribe, that family, even if you're family, but just being able to come together, that's key. And so I like how you put that together, man. I really do.
I stole that from the Voice of the Heart book. If anybody wants to talk about, like, another thing, I can talk about faith or not, but I really enjoy talking about faith and recovery. And if anyone has questions about Jesus or different religions, as a former atheist, I love that stuff too. I just love connecting with people about that, because a million years from now, we're all going to be somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Right. Either in the ground, no more if you're an atheist like I was, or you're going to be somewhere with your God, or what God are you going to be with, right? So those are really important eternal questions that I also enjoy people want to talk about.
Indeed. Well, look, Brian told you how to get in touch with him. Brian, man, I appreciate you coming out today. And for everyone, this is Greg and Brian with Guards Down, telling y'all to stay safe out there. And more importantly, stay focused and stay engaged.
That's it for this week's episode of Guards Down. We are counting on you to join us in the mission of spreading awareness about trauma and complicated grief. Be sure to give us an honest review, subscribe, and share with someone this could help. Catch you next week.